If you think the weather's bad today, you should have been in Honduras in 1998. A lot of people in 1998, October of 1998, went to bed having no idea what was actually taking place. What was going on in the Caribbean Sea was a storm was forming, and it quickly transitioned from just a winter or just a tropical storm to a full-blown hurricane. Some of you maybe remember hearing in the news about Hurricane Mitch. On October 22nd, this is how fast it developed. On October 22nd, it was a level 1. Okay, it was a level 1. Now, a level 1 basically has winds that range about 74 miles an hour to 95 miles an hour, that's pretty intense. A level 5 is winds of 150 miles per hour. So between October 22nd and October 26th, it went from just a tropical storm to Hurricane Mitch with winds that averaged about 180 miles an hour and gusts that went up to 200 miles per hour. It became the most devastating, deadly storm in 200 years. Okay, 200 years. Let me kind of show you what happened. On the 22nd, nobody really thought it was any big deal. Okay, if you live in Honduras, which is right here, or Nicaragua, or Belize, this is Belize, Mexico here. You don't freak out every time there is a tropical storm. It happens quite often. What the analysts, and actually the cyclone analysts and the hurricane analysts thought was that the way that the storm appeared to be going north, and so it looked like it was just going to kind of hit the coast as a tropical storm and be no big deal, but for reasons nobody knows, it picked up and became a level 5 in a very quick amount of time. And instead of taking a northern trajectory, it went headfirst into the eastern coastline of Honduras, and it was absolutely incredible. 11,000 people were recorded as dying. Some estimates put the figure as high as 18,000 people. One of the Honduran aid workers named Lourdes Aguiar said, families who didn't believe that the rivers would flood their banks went to bed as usual. If they managed to wake up in time, they escaped with their lives. Many others are quite simply no longer with us. Now, think about this. Think of context. 1998, Honduras. We're talking, this is communication that we have now. Social media, texting, cell phones. So 98, Honduras. Honduras is already a very poor country. In fact, the GDP of Honduras is less than annual revenue in some of the companies that you all work for. We're talking a very poor country. People live in huts. So the communication, when something elevates that quickly, there's just not time to get the word out. And so this hurricane hit the coast like a ton of bricks. Floods, mudslides brought on heavy rainfall, literally washed away entire villages, were destroyed. The majority of the country's crops and infrastructure were destroyed. The wind and the waves were terrible, but it was nothing compared to the incessant rain. Go ahead and go back to the map, okay? This is the unique thing about Hurricane Mitch. So you picture it going like this, okay? It's going like this at 180 to 200 miles an hour. But one of the very unique qualities of this storm is that it was extremely slow and agonizing in the way that it went west. So it's not like it went and just blew through everything quickly. It was abnormally slow in the pace that it went, although the vortex was just, as hard and fast as you could possibly be. And so what happened was it literally would just park over cities and just not even just the wind, but the incessant rain caused flooding, which caused mudslides, and it was just like dominoes. Several million people between Honduras, Nicaragua, Belize, and Mexico were made homeless immediately. Now, just imagine the chaos, okay? $5 billion worth of damage. The president of Honduras estimated that Hurricane Mitch set the economy of Honduras back 50 years, okay? Something that picked up that quickly. It wrecked over 35,000 homes. 20% of we're just talking Honduras right now, 20% of the country was homeless like that. Just for ratio context, that would be like 62 million Americans being homeless in a day or two, that quickly. And so because of that, it created absolute pandemonium. Think of this, 80% of the transportation infrastructures were damaged. You have people looting, you have people stealing. When you have a situation like that with that kind of poverty, it's not like people have, pantries and storage and margins in their life or something like that. People were literally starving to death, fighting for things like food. 70% of the country lost water during the storm. 123 health facilities destroyed. 123. 5,000 classrooms, which was a quarter of the classrooms in the nation, destroyed. Well, let me show you the magnitude of this storm. One of the areas that was hit the hardest in this storm was a city called Choluteca. And in Choluteca, there was what's called the Choluteca Bridge. Go ahead and bring up that picture of the bridge. This is the Choluteca Bridge. This is before the storm, okay? Before the storm, this is the Choluteca Bridge. In Choluteca, they had 7 months worth of rain in 5 days. And the banks, the river went 6 times its normal width, and the river swelled over 33 feet above what it normally was, and literally changed the entire landscape. This is a shot after, months after. And so you literally see that because of mudslides and because of the 7 months into 5 days, it literally changed the whole deal. And you've got this bridge sitting in the, literally bridge to nowhere. I mean, literally bridge in the middle of nowhere sitting there, and the river has moved. One particular individual story that hit global news was a woman by the name of Laura, and I'm going to butcher her last name because my Spanish is not bien. But it's Laura Arreola de Guidi. Listen to this. For 6 days, Laura, and this is her. Actually, go ahead and go back to that picture. This is an actual picture of her. Laura floated alone in the Caribbean Sea, clinging only to a makeshift raft she'd cobbled together out of palm branches. She was a human float that was cast in the sea by the power of Hurricane Mitch, and she lived in the coastal Honduras, close to the sea. Her house was washed away, and she tried to hold on to her 4-year-old son, with the surging waters tore him from her grasp, and she lost him. This is a quote from her. She said, "I was begging God to let someone find me and rescue me, but there was no one. No one saw me. I cried every day. Day and night I cried and screamed. I was praying and worshiping." After 6 days, Laura was on a plane, and she began waving her arms, and a rescue helicopter came down, picked her up. It was actually a British brigade that saw her. And not only did she lose her son, she lost her husband. She lost another son and a daughter, ages 8 and 10. So after this kind of devastation, people come in to help. And you had kind of 2 different ways that help came. It came from nations like America, nations like Great Britain, and others who came in, flew in helicopters. They brought things for rehabilitation work. They brought water. They brought sanitation infrastructures, outhouses, things like that, and some agriculture, some food. But a lot of the greatest work and the most effective work that was done were members of agencies that worked in local communities. They were brigades and committees that people just banded together and began working. And you see this picture. This is an actual picture in the capital of Honduras, and just people all over the place. Now, what does this story have to do with you and I and Columbus in 2015? As I think about this, I think about a story from the life of Jesus. Actually, we find it in John chapter 4, and I've actually preached on this particular text before. I'm not going to go way into it, but there's a particular element of it I want to zero in on. Let me give you a quick context. Here's the dynamics going on. Jesus and his disciples are traveling back home. You know what it's like to go home? You've been on a trip, you're tired, you just want to sleep in your own bed. You just want to get in your house, and the closer you get to home, the more you're anticipating being home. They're on their way home to Galilee, and they go through Samaria. To describe the racial tension going on in Samaria, Jesus eventually, in this story, literally goes up and initiates a conversation with a Samaritan woman. Her response to him is, "Why are you even talking to me?" Like, the racial tension was so hot and heavy between Jews and Samaritans that it would be inappropriate. It would have been out of the norm to even speak to each other. And Jesus comes in, the Bible says that it's noon, he's hungry, and the Bible says in verse 6 that he's tired. He literally sits down out of exhaustion, his dogs are barking, he just wants to get home, and he goes into Samaria. Now his disciples don't want to be in Samaria. They don't want to be in this part of town. They don't want to be around these people. Samaritans were not purebred Jews, so they were intermarried. Jews married other people of other races, religions, and cultures. And although today we would say, that's no big deal, in that day that was a huge deal. And people who were pure, had the pure line, Jewish line, felt tremendous hostility. And of course, Samaritans, feeling like we're outcasts and feeling rejected, felt that anger. And so Jesus sits down just to take a load off, to rest. He sees a woman who he's supposed to hate. He walks up to her, he initiates with her, and has this amazing, powerful conversation where he leads her to truth. And the whole time, he uses her physical thirst to help her see about her spiritual thirst. So he's like, hey, give me something to drink. And they start talking about that. And then he's like, hey, if you drink the water I give you, you'll never be thirsty again. Of course, she's confused, like, what are you talking about? And he takes her and basically talks about, look, the thing you've been trying to drink, you've been trying to drink water through relationships and all this different stuff. It's not doing it for you. It's because there's a thirsting in your soul. So what I give you will quench the thirsting of your soul. And he leads this woman through. This conversation culturally should have never happened. Of course, Jesus didn't care about that. He sees this woman, he sees life through a different lens. So he reaches out to her. On the tail end of this story, his disciples walk up. They've gone into the city. They've gone outside of Samaria to get food. That was kind of their excuse to not go into Samaria. Oh, yeah, you're going in there? You know what? We're going to go over here and get something to eat. Of course, it was noon. They were hungry, legitimate excuse. Jesus hasn't eaten. And they walk up to him. Now, have you ever been in a deep conversation and somebody comes up to you with something kind of trivial and it's kind of annoying? And they're kind of pressing in and they don't get it. Jesus has just led this woman through a life-changing conversation. He's helped her to see her need for him. She is so energized and excited with the truth she's been given. She's running into the town to tell everybody. And the disciples walk up to Jesus. You can cut the tension with a knife because the disciples come up and they're like happy-go-lucky. It's like no big deal. It's lunchtime. They walk up, they're like, hey, Jesus, you want something to eat? And Jesus is like, you know what? I got food you don't even know about. And they think, oh, somebody snuck him some food. Somebody gave him some food. He must have had some food we didn't know about. That's what the Bible says. They're like, oh, somebody must have given him some food. And Jesus is bothered that they're not bothered. Jesus is bothered that his disciples, who he has journeyed with, he's been hanging out with, he's been doing life with, has been listening to his teaching, saw him turn water into wine. He's bothered that they would walk into Samaria, they would see bigotry, and they would give into it. And that they would care more about their food than they would care about this woman. That they would care more about that than they would about a life. So Jesus, like he does with symbolism, he's like, I got food you don't even know about. And the disciples are still looking through the natural. And this is what Jesus says, John chapter 4. starting in verse 34, it says, Jesus explained, my nourishment comes from doing the will of God who sent me and from finishing his work. You know the saying, 4 months between planting and the harvest, but I say, wake up and look around. Make no mistake about it. You can't miss it. In this text, Jesus is trying to send a wake-up call to his disciples. He's annoyed that they're talking about food and there's people like this woman at the well. And he says, wake up and look around. Hey, I don't care about your stupid food, all right? Forget lunch. I don't care about that. Yeah, whatever, I'm hungry, I'm tired. Doesn't matter. People matter. And the disciples weren't getting it, right? So he says to them, wake up and look around. Open up your eyes, it says in another translation. Wake up and look around. What Jesus is waking the disciples up to here is a different set of lenses to look at life through. He's inviting not only the disciples, but he's inviting you and I to see the world like Jesus does. You want to see the world like Jesus does? Here, this is a perfect example. All that was going on, all the dynamics going on in the exterior had nothing to do with what Jesus could see in the spiritual. In the spiritual, he didn't see a woman of a different race. He didn't see a socially inappropriate interaction. He saw a woman who had had 5 husbands, was currently living with someone who wasn't her husband in a bad situation, and a woman, you know what he saw? Someone who was thirsty. That's what he saw. The disciples saw despicable. Not only is she a Samaritan, she's had 5 husbands and she's living with somebody. Oh, we have nothing in common. Jesus said, we do have something in common, thirst. We're all thirsty. And Jesus gets edgy here. He's edgy. He's like, guys, take your food and shove it. All right, that's a different translation. That's my translation of what he says here. So I don't care about your dumb food. Are you serious? Are you serious? You don't see this? You don't see this thirsty woman? All you see is that she's a Samaritan. You're looking through one set of eyes. And he goes on here. He takes it a step further. He says, the fields are already ripe with harvest. I think he's using a physical picture. Hey, you guys know what a white harvest field looks like it's ready to be picked? Okay? You guys see a place you don't want to be here. You know what I see? A place you should want to be. I see a place ready to be picked. He said the harvesters are paid good wages for the fruit they harvest. Look at this. And people, the fruit that they harvest is people brought to eternal life. The harvest, the work we do, is people brought to eternal life. Jesus says, open up your eyes, look around. It's time to take a step, boys. What joy awaits both the planter and the harvester alike? Now, I want you to think about this because the disciples fell into a trap that's very easy for all of us, me included, to fall into. They did not see the immediacy. They did not see the desperation in the situation. All they see, their biggest question that day is, where are we going to eat? Jesus, who's exhausted, sits down, catches breath, take a load off, sees a woman and goes, that's a desperate situation. I got to do something. You know what Jesus saw? He saw life and death. The disciples saw just another day. It's just another day. I mean, it's just Tuesday and we got to get some lunch. Jesus sees life and death. Now let's bring this together. Because today we have an opportunity to exchange the way we look at the world for the way Jesus looked at the world. It's not hard to see life and death in 1998 in Honduras. It's not hard to see life and death with 11,000 dead bodies. 1.5 million people in Honduras homeless. It's not hard to see that need. It's not hard to see the life and death of that. Can you see the life and death in Columbus, Ohio, 2015? disciples standing around this woman at the well, standing around the situation, they didn't see life and death. They saw peacetime. What's for lunch? Jesus says, wake up and look around. Jesus was bothered that they weren't bothered. One of the problems, I think, in the American church is we think it's peacetime. We don't think it's desperate because we're looking through the same lens the disciples were looking. I believe if I handed this mic off to Jesus and he stood here today, I think he would tell us to wake up and look around at what's around us. Why plant a church? Why ignite a movement? This is why, as a church, we don't have time to just play games. We don't have time to play church. We don't have time to go through the motions or just come to the show. If we're doing that, we're looking through the wrong lens. Come on. It would be like in 1998 being in Honduras and be doing something trivial. What? I mean, look at these pictures. I mean, there's a picture of go to the one of the group of people in the downtown city. I mean, you look at this. I mean, imagine a guy over here, trying to sing for cash. What? No. Imagine, somebody over here trying to be noticed, doing mime. Nobody cares, bro. We just got hit with a tornado. Everybody's dying. Pick up a shovel. Go to work. The problem is, most of us disciples are like the Jesus disciples. We don't understand. We don't see things for what it is. I want to challenge the way you see our city. I want to challenge the way you see the world 2015. Because I can go and I can look at Honduras and I can see this. This looks very immediate. Like there's a picture. Go ahead and go to the one of the house. Look at this. Hurricane Mitch comes in, tears this thing out. There's a home literally, this home is right on the edge, like literally could fall in. If I showed up and saw this house, if you showed up and saw this house, if you have any social conscience, if you care at all, I mean, you go up and be like, oh, let me help, let me make sure this thing doesn't fall. You'd help repair things. You'd help get the family out. You would jump in. You see the need there with your physical eye. Let me tell you, with a spiritual eye, can you see the homes in our city falling apart? The homes in our city that are like on the edge of a cliff. Sin has come in like a tornado. It's come in like a hurricane and flattened. Don't let an aesthetically pleasing community fool you. There are homes look like that. To this eye, disciple, if we open up our eyes and look around, they're like on the edge of a cliff. They're like one stiff breeze from falling apart. We live in this generation, my generation, the one coming up behind me, so socially conscious. Dude, we run to wherever and give everybody stuff, right? That's good, that's great. Let's do that. Let's do it over and over again. But let's have the eyes Jesus says. Jesus talks to this woman, water, the most basic need. He says, yeah, water? I know, so you're like thirsty and water, and actually water right now is this big thing. Everybody's getting people water. Yeah, water, yeah, that's good. No, nobody's gonna stand opposed to that. No, I don't think we ought to get people clean water. No, of course we do want to do that. Jesus uses water. And he's like, guess what? Guess what? There's a thirsting in your soul that's greater than the thirsting in your throat. Don't ever make the mistake of driving by that and assuming that that's what it looks like in the spiritual. God's put us in this city. The reason we plant churches is the same reason that people showed up in helicopters in Honduras. It's because their homes falling apart. Look at the picture of the mother. %20 of the nation homeless overnight. I saw this picture. I'm sitting in a coffee shop. trying to not cry like a baby in the middle of the coffee shop and draw attention to myself. And that's real. Imagine if you're there, you see this. Naked child. By the way, because that many people were homeless, they were cramming into shelters. There's only room, and they were cramming into churches, stadiums, arenas, like soccer stadiums and schools. Almost 300,000 people into shelters. Think about that. Diseases breaking out like crazy. They had a breakout of cholera and respiratory sicknesses, fevers breaking out because you have all these people in proximity, jammed into these little spaces. It was almost better to not be in a shelter. We see this woman. We would, oh gosh, I got some clothes I'll give. I'll help you. Guess what? We have this in our city. Through the physical eye, it's no comparison. We almost feel shallow. We might even rant and rave about it. Yeah, we just take for granted what we have over here. What's worse? Being spiritually destitute or physically destitute? Jesus says, hey, who are you afraid of? The one that can harm your body or the one that can cast your soul into hell? He's like, spiritual needs way worse. We've got this all around our city. We can have compassion for the lady carrying the naked baby. You have compassion for the lady whose husband makes more than you do? Makes more than your husband? Drives a nicer car? Has a better position? Has a better house? But is broken? If you could see in the spiritual, Jesus would say to us, open your eyes, look around. If we open our eyes and looked around, we would realize that she's just walking through rubble. The naked child, totally alone. A couple years before we moved here to plant this church, I felt this burden to just plant a bunch of churches. I didn't want to tell anybody about it because I thought, number one, I didn't want to go on record for something I didn't think I was going to be able to do. I felt so inadequate. I looked at the world and I felt like, looking in our world, I felt like all I saw was Hurricane Mitch wrecking everything. And so I literally have documents back in 2005, 6, where I'm on my computer coming up with ideas, typing up stuff. Hey, I think we could do this. And we send somebody else, and then maybe we can plant a church that can plant more churches than we can. And my thought was, I know I can't do it as a leader, but maybe if I can meet people that are better than me, okay, and we work together and kind of share this vision, maybe I can send them out and they can do more than we can do, and then together we can reach farther and do more. Began dreaming about this. My dream is that someday we come in with helicopters. Like there were nations that came in and brought massive amounts of food and water and medicine. Come in, just they had the resources to do it in massive amounts. We're not there yet. We can't afford helicopters yet. We're going to get there, I'm telling you. But here's what I feel like the Lord said to me. One, don't wait until you can afford a helicopter before you start helping people. Amen. So go back to the picture of the man, the whole group of people, and the man with the shovel. I was looking at this picture, looking at all these people. Imagine this mess. This is your city. This is your city. You didn't ask for you didn't invite Hurricane Mitch in, he just showed up. Sin just came in and blasted your city. And it looks like this. What do you do? Pick up a shovel and go to work. All these people could have sat back and waited on dump trucks. Hey, we're going to wait on the Americans to get here. We're going to wait on the English. We're going to wait on the people with money. We're going to wait on the bulldozers, the big earth movers. Maybe that's what that guy's doing because he's not really doing anything. But he's not. He's not. He put on a mask. He took his shovel, probably dull shovel, said, I'm going to work. How easy to be overwhelmed at this problem. Are you serious? Look at all this. By the way, people are looting over here, and how are you going to fix that? This guy's got probably a wife and kids, and what are they doing? Are my kids okay? Like, so many things to think about. This massive thing. He didn't have a helicopter. He had a shovel. So I'm going to take my shovel, and I'm going to do what I can do where I can do it until the helicopters show up. Church, we have to grab our shovel. Most of the days of my life, I feel like this guy. They estimated when the storm hit that it was going to take 15 years to rebuild. They're still rebuilding. This is what I know, that we can't get overwhelmed at the size of the need, but we need all hands on deck. And every single one of us in this room would pick up a shovel if a hurricane hit our city. Every one of us would do it. There's a whole other set of lenses to look through this world. It's the lens that Jesus gave his disciples. You got to see that woman different. You got to see that city different. The same passion, the same sense of urgency that we would have for people with no food, no clothes, no water. We got to have for people whose families, marriages, emotions, sin has wrecked their life. They're apart from God. Let's not wait for a helicopter. There's two things I'm going to ask you to do. First thing is to wake up and look around. Stop complaining about the world around you. Start feeling compassion for it. Stop complaining about your frickin' boss. Stop complaining about the culture at your work. Stop complaining about your neighborhood and your kids' school and realize that a hurricane has hit it. And it might be wearing a $150 cologne, but it's walking around on the street with a naked baby. That's the lens. The disciples were still so trivial that they would hate this woman just because they had these differences in values, differences in background. Wake up, look around, change the way you think, change the way you see. If if you start seeing these people through different eyes, you'll be more patient, you'll be more kind, you'll have so much greater of an impact. You'll start cleaning up the mess. Pray your way into work. Just shut the radio off, shut the phone off, pray your way in. Lord, give me your eyes today. Help me to wake up and look around. Help me to see things like you see. Give me the courage, Lord. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is to pick up a shovel. Pick up a shovel might mean a bunch of different things for you. Is different in different areas that we all reach. There's probably some specific application that you know that's coming to you now or will come throughout the week that's very personal to you. But I'm going to give you a way that we can all pick up a shovel. This is why we plant churches. This is why we came here to Columbus. This is why we're going to St. Louis. This is why we're raising money. We don't get any kickback from this. I don't get a commission off of this. This is gone. So I'm going to ask you to participate to help us. St. Louis has been hit by a tornado. St. Louis has been hit by a hurricane. St. Louis has been hit by a natural disaster called sin. And there's a guy and his wife who never lived in St. Louis who said, I'll go work at a coffee shop, walk into racial hostility, and grab a shovel. Let's buy him some shovels. Here's how we're going to do it. Our church has saved up money, and we're going to be given about $5,000. We could either take $5,000, send it to St. Louis, or we can try to do something special. That's what we're going to try to do. So instead of taking $5,000 and mailing it, we're going to give it to you. And second service. And so in order to help everybody to participate, we're going to be giving out $20 bills today. And we're going to try to give out 200 plus $20 bills today, and then we're giving the kids $5 bills to the older kids. We're not giving like 2-year-olds $5 bills. And by the way, I do want you to know your kid's going to be getting a $5 bill, so just please hold them accountable, okay? Because when I was in elementary school, I'd have bought a lot of Sprite. And so what we want you to do, take that $20. This week we're going to be posting online some ideas of things you could do. Maybe you buy a traveler, a traveler from your favorite coffee place. You go in and you sell cups of coffee and you let them know, hey, we're doing this fundraiser for our church to help some people trying to make the city of St. Louis better. Or maybe you have a family recipe. You take this $20, buy ingredients, bake stuff, sell it. We had a lady a couple years ago, we did this. She's like, I walked out, I had no idea what I was gonna do. She's like, I felt like overwhelmed because I really wanted to help, but I didn't know how to do it. She's like, and I just prayed, I'm like, look, God, give me an idea. She's like, I went to sleep, woke up in the middle of the night with this idea, make these bracelets, and I'm like, all right. So, she's telling me, and I'm thinking, I don't know, I don't even wear bracelets, but that's cool, that you're doing that. She ended up making like $70. She like tripled the money that she had. Who knows? I have no idea. Take a step of faith. We want to plant seed. $20 can't do that much, but maybe you take some, you put some more on it, you do something with it, you do something as a family. Like I said, we're going to be posting ideas this week, but I'm going to pray that God takes this money and that he multiplies it just like he did the loaves and fish. We're going to take steps of faith. I'm going to take steps of faith to try to multiply this and to do something for his glory. May we have the same sense of urgency that the world had to come around Honduras. So we've been given the same mission, and our mission is a matter of life and death. Our mission is a matter of life and death. Jesus gave us a mission, go into all the world, preach the good news. So let's open up our eyes. Let's look around. Let's pick up a shovel. Let's pray together.